Hello everyone and welcome back to HP Boarding, a board gaming channel that is dedicated to playing solitaire variants of various board games. And today I'm going to be taking a look at Pathfinder adventure card game, the Rise of the Runelords base set. This is basically the Pathfinder RPG in card game form. I am not a huge Pathfinder junkie. I have dabbled a little bit in it. But if you are looking for someone to compare this to the Pathfinder RPG, this is not going to be the video series for you. Think of me as a complete newbie trying to get into this game, trying to find out if this is something that's fun to play for someone that isn't actually a huge RPG junkie. Alright, so let's just quickly take a look at the box and what's in the box. What's in the box? Lots of cards. That's what's in the box. There's plenty of cards in this box. The first thing to actually remark on, this particular box is huge. I mean, it's immense. It's probably one of the largest boxes that I have for any of my board games, and that's good. That's great. The cards fit very well. They are sectioned off, and the manual even has a recommended way of actually placing these things, the tray layout and how you should place the various types of cards. And I strongly suggest that you follow this tray layout, because during setup for the various adventures and scenarios, you actually move from one part of the tray to the next, and you follow this this tray layout, so it's much easier to set up various games. The game comes with, I think it's like 540 cards or something. The base set is about 420 cards, and then you have this Rise of the Runelords, that's the base set, the Burnt Offering adventure deck that you get with the base set, and this is another adventure that you can have. So yeah, really large box, fits perfectly. There's plenty of room here for expansions, and I think they are planning lots of these expansions. They are planning to release like one expansion every other month or something like that. Sleeved cards barely fit, but that might be because I have these budget sleeves that actually stick up a little bit, but they do fit, and when you close the lid you kind of hear the sleeves crunch a little bit, so it's a snug fit, but you're able to close the box even if you have sleeved all your cards. Alright, so rather than going through each of these card types and showing you what different card types are in this game, I think I'm gonna move on to the setup, and I'm gonna play the basic adventure for this video series, but I think that I'm gonna actually make more videos of this, and I'm gonna try to follow the adventure path that's in this Rise of the Runelords box, and I'm gonna try to play through each of these, because you do keep your characters when you complete an adventure or a scenario. You can customize your characters and keep them for further adventuring in the future. So I think I'm gonna start off with the basic or the beginning adventure, and then after that I'm gonna move on to the this expansion here, which is the Burnt Offerings adventure deck. So here we have the various adventures that come in this base set. The way to think of the structure of these are actually hierarchically structured. The way you can think of this is the adventure cards, this card here, the Perils of the Lost Coast, it says adventure up here. So these are the, let's say these are kind of like the quests of the game. These are various places that you have to explore and examine, and that you have to beat to complete this particular adventure or quest. and then you have the paths here, adventure path. It says up here, the last card said adventure only. These are kind of like the quest lines or the acts of a normal RPG, if you want to think of it like a console RPG or something like that. So these outline various different quests that or adventures. I'm gonna stop using the word quest, but because it doesn't appear anywhere on the card and it's just gonna confuse people. But the adventure path actually outlines in what order you are going to be having your adventures. This is the adventure path that comes with the Rise of the Runelords, and immediately you're gonna wonder why you don't have these adventures, because it only has the burnt offerings in the box. The other ones are expansions, I'm assuming, so they will be coming out shortly. But the burnt offerings is a fairly long adventure in itself, so I think that would hold you on for several weeks until one of these expansion actually come out. So yeah, you have the adventure path, which is the act or the major quest line, which I keep saying quest. There are no quests in this game. I'm just gonna confuse everyone, even including myself. The main adventure or act of the game, and then you have the further down structure is the adventures, and then you have scenarios which are connected to the adventure. We are going to be taking a little bit closer look on these when we begin our setup. I just wanted to kind of show you the structure of the game itself. So the game can be played either choosing this adventure path or just completing one adventure, or alternatively you could just play one scenario if you want to. This is just the fastest way to actually get a game going. So if you don't have that much time, if you just want to play a quick game, you could actually choose one of these scenarios, and there are plenty of them. There are like 10 of them included in the game, so you have quite a lot of variability. But if you do choose to play an adventure, the adventure card itself will actually list what scenarios you have to complete and in what order. I think you have to complete these in order. Yeah, it does say on the card, complete these scenarios in this order. So this is the basic or the beginning adventure, something to get you started and something to make you comfortable with the game and the game rules. And this is the Peril of the Lost Coast. This adventure in particular is not included in the burnt offerings, or not the burnt offerings, but in the adventure path that comes with the game. And the adventure path is just called an adventure path. So yeah, this Perils of the Lost Coast is not included in that. So this is basically a training scenario. But this is the scenario that I will be taking a look at today, and the scenarios, or the adventure that I will be taking a look at today, and the scenarios for this adventure are Bringandoom, the Poison Pill, and the Black Fang's Dungeon. Alright, so here we have the scenarios that are outlined on our adventure up here, and they are the Bringandoom, the Poison Pill, and the Black Fang's Dungeon, and this is the order that you have to complete them in. This game is very structural or hierarchical, so you kind of have to keep an eye out on where you are in the structure and what you are doing. But once you have learned this once, I think it's fairly easy to actually understand what the game wants you to do. The Bringandoom scenario in question is the first scenario, and if we take a look at the back of the scenario, we have various locations. All of these scenarios have various locations that are kind of part of this scenario. They are locations that you have to explore and that you have to get through to complete this scenario. So taking a little bit closer look at the first scenario here, the Bringandoom scenario, we see that the location table actually has some numbers next to it. And these are the number of players that you have. So if you only have one player, you only have to go through the woods, the waterport, and the, let's see, I can't see that, the farmhouse. And then as you add more players, or as you add more characters for your solo playthrough, you add the various different locations that are on this card, up to I think 6. Yeah, you can have up to 6 players, but sadly the base set actually just only supports 4 players. You don't have enough cards to build 6 decks unless you use some of the more powerful cards. I think you can build a few more characters, maybe 5 characters if you use the more powerful cards, but yeah, I think they made this consciously. They wanted to expand the game further along, so the game only supports 4 given characters at a time. The location deck is pretty big, as you can see, so there are quite a few locations that you can explore, and each of these locations have something associated with them. For instance, here the city gate, if you fail a combat check, you add more monsters to this location, and then they have various closing attributes, or whatever you want to call it, various closing checks that you have to complete. Taking a little bit closer look at a location, you see that there is yet another table. So this game is layered. It's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. So you start off with choosing adventure, and then you just go down, 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 down until you have completed the setup of the game. And it's, like I said, it looks like it's complicated, but it's not really that complicated. It's a fairly easy way to do things, and I actually kind of like it. I like that you can just follow down through kind of a ladder to build up your game, and you actually know what locations and what scenarios you are going to be facing. But taking a closer look at one of these locations, we see that it has this deck list table here, and that's the way you build this location's deck. You add X amount of these various different card types to that location deck, and then you shuffle it, and that then becomes your location deck. When we start this setup, this will become more clear, but I just wanted to kind of show you that this structure that starts up at the top with the adventure path and then goes down all the way down to the various locations. Alright, so let's start a fresh setup here, so we can go through all of these setup steps, and much of this will become clear once we start putting things up on the board. First of all, you have to choose if you are going to go through an adventure path, if you're going to have an adventure, or just play a standalone scenario. And I will be playing this adventure, which is the Peril of the Lost Coast. So I place that on the board here, and then this card outlines what different scenarios that I have to go through to complete this adventure. And the first listed is Bringandoom, or whatever you want to, however you want to pronounce that. But this is the first scenario, so we will be placing that next to the adventure. And then on the back side here we have the various locations depending on how many characters you want to play with. I'm gonna go with 3 characters for this playthrough. I think that playing with just one character is kind of boring. I want to have various different characters, and I think 3 is fine. For the 3, if you have 3 characters, you have 5 different locations, and these are the locations for this particular scenario. You have the farmhouse, the woods, the wooden bridge, the waterfront, and the academy. Alright, so here we have the setup so far. We have our adventure, our chosen scenario, and then the locations that are part of the scenario in question. So now we have to build decks for these various locations. So let's take a look at one of these locations. This is the farmhouse. It has some special rules associated with it. Rules when you are at this location, when you are closing this location, or when you move in and out of this location. It kind of depends on the location itself, but it also has a deck list with X amount of each card that exists in the game. The way you do this randomly. So for instance here it says monsters 3, so you would just shuffle your monster deck and then you would pull out 3 random monsters to populate this deck with. And then you just move on through the list and you create one of the deck for this particular location. The way I recommend doing this is adding monsters to all of the locations, then adding blessings or barriers to all of the locations and so on and so forth. Not making one deck at a time, but making all of the decks at the same time, since you will be needing the same cards basically to make these various decks. I will not be showing this on camera, it takes way too long, so I will be back once I have built the various decks for these locations. And voila! I have added the different various cards to these locations, but we are not done yet. We also have to add the villain and the henchman to these decks. So we take a look at the scenario card. It says that the villain is Gibrail Whiskey and the henchmen are the bandits. So let's take a look at the villain here. Let's pull him out. Here he is, Gibrail Whiskey. It's a good idea to actually take a look at this villain card to see if there's anything special when you encounter this villain, so that you don't rush in with a character that will get slaughtered by him. But this is just a human rogue, he's not that difficult to beat, and before the encounter you just recharge 2 cards. This could mean that some of the characters could have trouble with him because they lose 2 of their cards from their hand, and the hand is actually limited for each of the players. But this guy in particular is not that difficult. So yeah, this is the villain, and then we have to add henchmen, and the amount of henchmen that you add to the locations is the number of locations minus 1, which is the villain card, and then you add rest of the cards for as the henchman card. So in this case we have 5 locations minus 1, that's 4 henchmen. So here we go, here we have our henchmen. These are the bandits, and it's a good idea to take a look at these as well to see if they are dangerous or have some sort of ability that will hinder some of the characters to actually face them. But this is pretty much just a weaker version of the villain. It says before the encounter recharge a card of your choice from your hand. If defeated you may immediately attempt to close this location. All of the henchmen actually have this if defeated clause on them. We will talk about that a bit later, and they only have a combat check of 8 to defeat, so these are pretty weak and they are pretty easy. The reason why they recharge cards I think is connected with the scenario, and there are these small rules that you have to keep track of. I almost certainly will forget one of these rules at some point in the game, but the scenario in question here has, if a monster's power causes you to recharge a card, draw a card after doing so. So actually the villain and the henchman abilities are not that hindering, because you do get to redraw your hand again before you face them. On the other hand, you will probably lose some of the better cards that you have kept in your hand, and then you will get some random cards, but that's not too bad. Most of the cards in your deck will actually help you. So yeah, that's not too bad. Alright, so I have shuffled the henchman and the villain. These are the 5 cards now. You kind of have to trick your mind a little bit so it can't keep track of where the villain is. But these now will go on top of these decks. So 1 each, so just deal them on top of one of each of these decks. And now the locations are complete. Each of these locations actually have 9 cards in them, and then you add the villain or the henchman card to it, so it's 10 cards per location. It's a pattern for most of the adventures and scenarios. The locations have X amount of cards in them, and they all share equal amount. So far as I have seen, at least for this Perils of the Lost Coast adventure. So now we have to shuffle all of these decks because they are not shuffled, and I will do this off camera, of course. Alright, so locations are set, they are shuffled, and the villain is now at one of these locations. And we can talk a little bit about the objective of the scenario here. The objective is to find and defeat the villain. This is not as easy as it sounds, because if you find a villain, even if you defeat him, he can still actually run away. He can escape to one of the other locations as long as they are open. You can attempt to temporarily close or permanently close a location, and that makes it impossible for the villain to escape. So it's actually quite a good idea to try to go through some of these locations and try to close them. The way you close locations is either fighting the henchman at that location or just going through the entire deck at that location, and then you get to a closing check that you can perform. These will vary depending on what location you are at. You can also temporarily close a location. So let's say if your party is spread out, you have two permanently closed locations, and then you have 3 open locations. You have 3 characters at 3 different of these open locations, and one of them finds the villain. Then the other 2 can actually attempt to temporarily close their locations, which makes it impossible for the villain to flee to one of those locations. So if you defeat the villain at that point, you have won the scenario. Alternatively, you could also let the villain escape so that you can find some more loot and such if you have enough time. And this brings us to the timer of the game. The timer is in a form of these blessings cards. So you shuffle these, and then you deal 30 random blessings, and this becomes your timer. You have 30 turns to complete this scenario and other scenarios. So I will be doing this now. I will make this deck. Alright, so here we have it. This is the 30 blessings deck. So this is our timer, and the reason why they are random is because some of your cards, some of the blessings that you have, Blessing of the Gods, can actually copy the blessings that are on top of the discard pile of this turn counter. So yeah, you don't want to know what blessings are in this deck. You have to have it randomly so that you can have some additional random element to the game. And the blessing cards are actually one of the most powerful cards in this game, if not the most powerful cards in this game, as we will see during gameplay. But you take this blessings deck now and you place it up here next to the scenario, and now this becomes our timer for the game. I've been playing this game a few times now, and I haven't actually had that much difficulty getting through the scenario before the blessing deck has run out. But if you do durdle, if you do roll badly, you could actually kind of get stuck, and if you do that, you could find yourself in a situation where you don't have enough time to find the villain, to defeat the villain. So you have to be a little bit lucky here and there to actually complete the scenario, which is fine. It's something that every RPG in existence has, some random luck and element to it. So yeah, these are now the entire this is now the entire board. This is the setup for the board or the AI part of the game, and then you have to create your character deck. Now in the manual they actually have a circle the way they place this, but since I'm playing solitaire, that doesn't make any sense. I don't want to move around the table to actually get to these decks, so I just place them facing where I'm sitting. Alright, so having taken a look at the board, let's now take a look at the various characters that are in this game. The base game comes with 7 different characters, and I have to apologize, I have no idea who these people are. They're probably some iconic Pathfinder characters, but I don't actually know that. These are your basic fantasy characters, pretty much. You have the sorcerer, the cleric, the fighter, the rogue, the ranger, the wizard, and the bard. So these are the different archetypes that you can you can play with the base set, and then you have the character add-on decks that actually add various different characters to the game. I'm assuming that they will be adding more and more characters as the game progresses through the year. But you have some great variety here, and these are actually the kind of like the avatars of the characters. You don't actually use these for anything. This is just to show where on the adventure the characters are at the moment. If we take a little bit closer look at one of these characters. So here, for instance, we have Kyra, which is the female human cleric. This is probably my favorite character of this base set. I do enjoy playing various support roles, and the cleric is one of my favorite support roles. She can not only support and heal other characters, she can actually hold her own in the battlefield. So I just absolutely love Kyra, and the games become a little bit easier when you have Kyra, but they do become quite grindy. The immediate problem with this game is that it is really grindy. So if you're not up to playing this kind of game, this will probably be a horrible experience for you, because through all of these scenarios you do improve your character, but you improve in such small incremental bits that it actually doesn't feel like you're improving all that much, which is fine for people like me who enjoy these type of games and have enjoyed these type of games through my entire life. So just be warned, if you do not like grindy games, this is probably not a game for you. The characters come with 3 different cards. You have the avatar up here, and then you have some sort of a explanation or inventory card for your character, where all your skills and attributes are listed and sort of explained. This is your basic character sheet, so to speak. And then you have the specialization roles up here, or to the right here, but these are not going to be used for these base scenarios. I will not be talking about these for now. It will just complicate things. So let's just take a look at the character sheet here, or the character card. Immediately you see a big problem with this. They actually want you to write on these cards. They want you to check these boxes when you have acquired different skills and you have gone up in level. I don't like that at all. I think it's terrible design. I don't want to write on my cards. It doesn't matter what soft touch you use, it will always leave some marks, and it just looks terrible. So I will probably have to make some copies of all of these character cards to actually be able to write on the copies, or keep some sort of score on the side, not using these cards at all. This looks a little bit daunting if you have never played an RPG before, and I'm not just talking about a Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons RPG. Basically, if you have played any type of RPG in the last 10-15 years, you will recognize these attributes and these different skills. So even though it looks kind of daunting, it looks like it has a lot of text, it's not that difficult. For instance, if you have played Dragon Age on any console, you will recognize these attributes like strength, dexterity, constitution. You have intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These are just different various attributes for your characters, and then next to them you have the various dice that you need when you are rolling for these checks. whether it's combat related or you have to pass some sort of a check out in the field. Then you have the powers of the characters, and sadly I think the manual is a little bit unclear on when to use when you can use various powers, not just powers like here. For instance, this power is pretty self-explanatory. It says instead of your first exploration for a turn, you can reveal a divine card and then you get to heal instead of exploring. So that's pretty explanatory. But some of the cards have powers as well, and it doesn't say when you can play them. So I'm going to assume that you can play those powers whenever you want. They are instant powers, and I think the manual says that somewhere. If a card doesn't specify a time when you can play, you can just play it whenever you want. Just be aware that for every check in the game, you can only play, every character can only play one type of a card. So you can only play one spell for one check. You cannot add multiple spells to add to a check, whether it is a combat check or some sort of peril or something that you have to get past. You can only play one of the same type. So yeah, for instance, like one spell, you can use one weapon and you can use one item. You cannot use 4 weapons and play 2 spells or something like that. I think this will become more clear once we get started. But yeah, these are the basic character cards that come with the game. They also specify hand size and what the character is proficient with, and these are important because some cards, mostly the weapon cards, say that if you are not proficient with weapons, you have to add a difficulty to the combat check because you don't know how to use a sword, so you are more likely to miss, even though the sword adds a bunch of dice to your roll. On the back here, on the back of this character sheet, we have some general info about Kyra and about her deck, the way to build her starting deck. So just like for the various locations, you have various listed cards here that you use to build your deck with. So for instance, Kyra has 2 weapons, 3 spells, 2 armor, 1 item, 1 ally, and 6 blessing cards for her starting deck. These could be random, or you could pick them out if you want, as long as you follow these guidelines. You cannot have more than 2 weapons, you cannot have more than 3 spells, and so on. You could, in the manual, they actually give you these. Let's see if I can zoom in on Kyra here. Yeah, they give you this suggested deck list, and they actually specify what spells Kyra should start off with, and what items, weapons and such she should start off with. So I suggest that you use this manual to actually build your first deck. Now I won't be doing that since I've already run through this scenario or this adventure once, so I've actually improved my character slightly, and I want to keep using those cards. I don't want to have to write them down and then redo the entire thing again. So I'm gonna be using the slightly powered up deck for Kyra, but I will still be respecting these various limitations on her different card types that she has, because I have not leveled up or added anything here since I didn't actually complete this adventure, and completing the adventure gives you a skill point which you can put on various different of these checkboxes that you have on your character sheet. But I didn't do that. I stopped my playthrough so I can actually record this in a timely fashion, since I don't have that much time this week to record. So even though I have improved my decks for the characters that I will be using, they don't have an additional feat or an additional skill. But yeah, that is just quickly a look at the various character sheets. The other characters also have this same structure, so we don't have to look at each and every character. The only thing that's different is what type of dice they are using and what type of various proficiencies they have. On the back side as well we have, let's grab the card here. We have up here favorite card type, blessing. So this is important when you are drawing your starting hand, because you have to have one of these favorite card type cards in your hand to actually start the game off. So if you do not draw a blessing in your starting hand, you discard the hand and you draw again, and then you shuffle your discard pile into your deck until you have found a blessing for your starting hand. Another thing to take a look at, these skills actually have sub categories. So for instance, Kyra, since she is a cleric, she is melee centric, so she has a focus on melee. So for her strength dice, she actually, we will see this on various checks, especially in combat, when you have to use strength or melee skills here. She actually gets some bonus because she's melee centric. Also she has fortitude because once again she's a cleric, so she has armor, high rated armor value. So she doesn't take as much damage from different checks and different barriers and such that you will encounter. And once again, since she's a cleric, she has the divine skill, which is the healing skill of the game. Her proficiencies are light armor and heavy armor. She's not proficient in weapons. She's more of a support role than a fighter, so to speak. And then you have the powers down here. I've already talked about the first exploration. You can heal instead of doing the first exploration. The first exploration is always free. So instead of that, you can reveal a divine card and heal a character in your location. Alright, so here we have my entire party. As you can see, I don't have to talk about the character sheets for these characters, since they are basically identical to Kyra. They're only different in what type of dice and what proficiency they have. But I will be talking a little bit about let's see what their special ability is, or what their power is here. So first of all, Valorous has a hand size of 4. He's proficient in light armor, heavy armor and weapon, and this is our fighter. Kind of like a tank, but he's not a tank yet since he is not specialized, so he's actually a little bit more of a damage dealer that can take a bit of damage himself. And then his power is add 1d4 to another character's combat check at your location, and you can improve this to be a better roll as you move through and level up your character. Then you have, when you play a weapon, you may recharge it instead of discarding it. So this is when you would play a weapon and you would have to discard the weapon after you have played it. You can actually just recharge it, and recharging means that you put it at the bottom of your deck. Something I probably should have talked about earlier, your deck is your health pool. Each character has 15 cards in their deck, so they have 15 hit points. But as you saw here, Valorous has a hand size of 4, Kyra has a hand size of 5, and Seoni, which is the sorceress, she has a hand size of 6. And after each turn you draw up to your hand size. So Seoni is a little bit more squishy. She will burn through her deck faster than the other characters. She also needs to use more cards to deal more damage. So she is in a bit of a danger of dying if you just keep on churning out powers and playing cards with her. That's why Kyra is so important, because she can heal Seoni and fuel her damage dealing machine. This is probably the classic fantasy setup. You have the fighter, the tank, the cleric, the healer, and then the sorceress, the damage dealer. I like to play with this setup. This is actually a bit grindy setup, so if you don't like that, this will probably not appeal to you. You could go with 3 damage dealers instead, but I like having Kyra and I like having a warrior. These are my 2 favorite classes in all fantasy games, so I like to go with this setup. And then we have, let's take a look at Seoni just for completeness sake. Like I said, she has a hand size of 6, and when you are making combat checks, if you do not have either a weapon or a spell, you actually have to use your strength value, and her strength value is a D4, which is terrible. So instead of that, to kind of battle this, she has this special power. For your combat check, you may discard a card to roll your arcane die plus 1d6 with the attack, fire and magic traits. This counts as playing a spell. So even though she doesn't have a spell, she can actually use magic to combat, which is fairly important, because sometimes she will not have enough spells in her hand to actually, or she will not have any spells in her hand, and she will be forced to make combat checks. So this is fairly important skill, and this is probably the one that I will be remembering. But having said that, I will probably forget it a few times anyway. So you have to bear with me if I forget these special powers of these characters. And then her second power is you automatically succeed at your check to recharge a spell with the arcane trait. You could level this up to an item as well, so she doesn't have to discard spells and items with arcane traits. But at the beginning of the game she only has this 4 spells, which is great, like I said, because she burns through spells quite fast, so it's good that she can actually put them back at the bottom of her deck. But yeah, those are my 3 characters, and I don't actually know how I'm gonna do this, if I'm gonna use the tripod or move around, because as you can see, let's see if we can, this stupid tripod is terrible. If we zoom out here, this is fairly large setup here. So let's see. So I don't know. I will try to use the tripod as much as possible. I don't know if you can read the cards up here, if you can read these. Some of these do have special abilities on them. I could actually, what I could do is I could pick the cards up and show it to you, like I've done so far. So maybe that's how we'll be doing it. Another thing to talk about, the character decks, like I talked about, they are a little bit powered up, so they are not the basic decks that you start off with. The if you follow the manual here. These are the dice that come. Let's see. So a closer look at these. These are the dice that come with the game. Just some basic dice. You have a D8, a D12, a D4, D6 and a D10. They only come in this, these are the only 5 that actually come with the game, which is a little bit troublesome because most cards and traits actually add extra, especially the Blessing of the Gods adds extra dice to your roll. So you will not have enough dice with just these 5. You could either re-roll the dice that you have, or you can add some random dice. I have some random dice here so that I can add to my rolls, but I don't know, I don't like that. I think like dice are not that, I mean, they don't cost that much. They could have added more dice. They could at least had 2 of each type, but well, we have to make do with what we have. So I will be using some random dice that I had lying around here. Okay, so I will take a short break here, and I will be back shortly with starting the playthrough of this game.